All right, Aaron Burke, it is awesome to have you on the show for a couple of reasons. Because one, we've become good friends the last couple of years as I've gotten to know you a bit more. Also, you're my pastor, so this is kind of a fun dual roles. You wear two hats in terms of how we relate to each other. But I respect everything you've built at Radiant Church. You're the author of The Unfair Advantage, which is an incredible book, and I want to get into that as well today. But just wanted to thank you for taking time out of your busy day, because I know you got a lot going on and you're hard to pin down, and that's totally fair. But you're doing good work in the world, so thanks for being here, bro.
Graham, I am so honored. I love you guys so much. Love what you have built and the voice you are to so many people, and love this podcast. I'm so excited. I normally watch these on YouTube, so I'm pumped to be part of it. Like, I've been a fan for a long time, so I get to be on the inside scoop. I feel honored.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, I'm honored that you're excited to be here. So I want to get into a lot of how you think, because I think you think strategically as a church planter building. If anyone's never planted a church, and I was a part of a church plant, it is just like starting a business, only harder, because you don't have anything to sell. Like it's for free, and people complain the most about the free stuff. So it's like it's the hardest thing I ever did was be part of a church plant, and you've built a very thriving church here in Tampa. I mean, thousands and thousands of people on a Sunday. I think over Easter weekend we had over 17,000 people a part of services over the weekend. And it's just a growing church, 10 now, almost 11 locations in the Tampa Bay area. It's been a huge blessing to my family the last couple of years of being a part of it. But just get in real quick, just a version of how and why did you and Katie start this thing? I know you have a background not only in ministry, but also you have an entrepreneurial background, and you are a strategic thinker. So maybe give us a little bit of that, like what brought Aaron Burke to this point, and why would you start a church?
Yeah, well, I grew up in a used car salesman's home. My dad, he owned car businesses. I remember being 12, 13 years old and going with him to repo vehicles and like the real rough parts of Baton Rouge and then Pensacola. And it was like, it was ingrained in me, just this idea of business and how to do things well. And then I ended up doing some missions work overseas when I graduated from college, and I hated fundraising. Like, I hated asking people for money. So my dad's like, why don't you start a thrift store? And so I ended up starting this big thrift store. I mean, I was 23 years old, like no credit, no anything. And I got the largest location on the busiest street in Pensacola. Should never even be able to sign the lease, but they gave me the lease. And they told me to take 3 months to open the store. Well, I had to have it open in 3 weeks because I didn't have money for my second month's rent. So we had it open in 3 weeks, and that was our first kind of business I ever started. And the money, it was a nonprofit. It went to our missions work overseas. Ended up selling that after about 5 years. I was doing some youth ministry at the same time, and Katie and I, my wife and I, we felt like God had called us to start a church in Tampa. We wanted to be in a big city. We wanted to be in a big city like that. We didn't feel like we had to escape to go on vacation. You know, like, I want to live somewhere where I love the city.
Come on now, yes.
We fell in love with the Tampa Bay area, and so moved down here in 2013 with nothing. I'm telling you, it was our 6-month-old baby, a little demonic dog that has gone on to not be with the Lord. I don't know where that dog is, but it's gone. And but we didn't know anybody. We had no money. I had a little bit of finances that were left over from that sale of that business that kind of held me over. For a little bit. My wife was a nurse, but I'm telling you, talking about the grit and the grind of like, I got a dream in my heart. I want to make it happen. We didn't know anybody in Tampa. My family lived about an hour away in Lakeland. We slept on their couch for 3 months, and I drove every morning at 5 a.m. into Tampa and would go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings and different networking meetings and just meet people. I remember sitting at a funeral home for a social event that they were doing at this brand new funeral home that was opening in the community, and just sitting by the casket. That was like, the casket was like an open casket with all this alcohol inside, all this beer and stuff. So when people would come up and get their drink out of the casket, I'd just start talking to them, and I would wait for them, Graham, to tell me the story, tell me that, to ask the question. And, you know, I just, hey, what are you doing? Oh, you sell insurance? Wow. Tell me about insurance. Tell me, what do you sell? And I was waiting for them to just ask this one question. So what do you do? And then I'd be like, crazy enough, my wife and I just sold everything, moved to Tampa. We're going to start a church. And so anyway, that's how it all started, and built a team to about 40 people. after about 6 months of just begging people to be part of the church. And it was crazy that the organization that would trained us, I said, how do you meet people? They're like, oh, you just go to like a Chick-fil-A and go like sit at the playground and then you'll meet, other young families. Well, that sounds like a really cool idea until you're a, 28, 29-year-old dude sitting by myself at a kid's playground in Chick-fil-A. Like just waiting for people to walk up going, hey, are those your kids? Hey, you want to come to church with me? Like it was very weird. But anyway, we started the church and it's been crazy 10 years of unbelievable pain, but unbelievable blessing at the same time. And so people look at it now and go, man, look at the success and all the people and all the locations. And like anything in life, an overnight success is decades of hard work behind the scenes that nobody saw, that nobody was recognizing, that nobody's inviting you on their podcast to talk about. Right. It's like, that's the reality. And now we get to see the fruit of it. But that's who we are.
That's amazing, bro. I don't know what's weirder, you going to funeral homes to get people interested in your church, or that they were using a casket for a cooler for the drinks. Like it's actually really weird. Oh, bro, that's a funny story, man. So I mean, thank you for sharing that. Like I think it's important for people to know, because they might be like, well, why is he bringing a pastor on the show? But this is like, so to me, this is so obvious. Like, you're an author, and I know book number 2, you're trying to propose, like literally you're telling me you're putting the proposal in today to the publisher, but you have this incredible book that I want to get into, but you've built this incredible organization, and running a church and founding a church, like planting a church from scratch is, like I said, just like a business, only in a lot of ways it's harder because there's less money. You don't have a product to sell. You have to ask people to support it. And then you have to staff it with people. Some are paid if there's enough money. Most of them are unpaid. So this is really about vision casting. And being in it, I've just seen how hard it is and the toll it takes on pastors. I have a lot of friends that are pastors, and just it takes a toll. So it's rare to see a church not only as large as it is in terms of numbers, which is usually what people are interested in, but what I'm interested in being a part of the church now is seeing how strategic it is. Like I look around and I'm like, I'm pointing at stuff, strategy. I'm thinking like a marketer. And I think it's brilliant because it's like anything else, like every message, everything is sales, right? Every message is sales, every idea. So you have to sell your spouse on an idea. You have to sell like the world on an idea to change them. Like everything is selling. And I think selling gets a bad rap, but one of my favorite books is The Go-Giver by Bob Burg, and he says that we get the word sell from an old English word selon, which means to give. So selling is really just giving. And you've done a great job of giving the vision for people, giving a place where people want to come, they want to bring their families to, and the community loves it. So I honor you in that, but I want to kind of get into something that I think is really interesting. And my first official question is that one of the things I've learned about you, Aaron, in the last 2 years, and that I respect about you, is that you're willing to, at the church, try new things, anything almost, and also kill things off quickly, probably to the dismay of your staff. Whatever serves the mission. Like you're so willing to adapt and change. So my question is, how do you personally think about innovation and change when leading an organization? And then how can we as entrepreneurs and leaders find that balance between stability, here's what's worked, here's what's always worked, and innovation?
Yeah, well, a few things on this. Yeah, we change stuff all the time. I mean, the only constant in our church is change. I mean, it seems like we're always, the first few years, it was, my wife would text me on Sunday and be like, what are the service times? I know y'all kept changing. I'm like, we almost made it where people had to like guess where it is. And some of that is good because I think I love the grittiness of it. I never wanted to get to a place where it's like, I think the phrase that is the key to a dying organization is this: we've always done it this way. Well, we've just always done it this way. We've always done this. We've always had staff meeting this way. We've always done our follow up this way. We've always received feedback this way. We always treated our customers this way. I think it's a terrible way of doing it. Our world changes drastically. and we have to adapt with a change. So our vision and our strategy, I mean, it's non-negotiable what we're going to do, and we love to see people's lives get transformed. But our method of seeing that happen has changed throughout the years. I mean, it's constantly shifting. And I think of COVID. I mean, COVID, radically shifted our entire world. So as a church, we're looking at what does this mean for us? Well, we put a heavy investment in our online, into social media, into YouTube, into making sure that we had created a great experience for people. People were going to church about, twice a month before COVID. Then COVID happened. And now it's 1 out of every 4 weeks is the stat that people attend a church in person, knowing that they still say, that's my church. So I've got to create environments where people can stay connected with the weeks that they're not there, whether it's a ball game that they're with their kids or traveling or just life. So we had to adapt that way. We're constantly having to adapt when it comes to scale. I mean, we went from 1 location to 2. We had 12 part-time, barely stipend staff members. We were 800 people as a church, 12 kind of stipend staff before we ever had another full-time employee other than me. It was a terrible way to do the church, but I just knew that financial stewardship was a massive priority for me. And I had seen churches through the past collapse because they just did not know how to handle finances. Well, that's one thing that God has gifted me with. I got my MBA. I love to crunch numbers. I love to figure out how to increase generosity and decrease expenses so that we can have margin. Like, I'm thinking that way. And so we're always having to adapt of, man, what are those things that we can cut? What are those things that we can have the same outcome, but use less expenses to make it happen? So I'm thinking that all the time. So that's not just when it comes to products or things that we do. It's also meetings. Like, how many meetings do we actually need to make this meeting happen? Like, I'm looking around the room now, and we have 100 full-time staff members, and I'm looking around going, I know what they make. I know what they make. I know what they make. This is an expensive meeting. We better get them out of here quickly. So it's those kind of mentality of like, just don't get stuck. And I think people love vision. They love fresh vision. They love being part of a growing, exciting organization. One of the greatest things I think we do at Radiant is we're constantly reminding people of the why and the when. The why and the when. Why are we doing this? And what's the wins that we've seen? The why and the when. If you overemphasize the why, people will get burned out. So they're always thinking of like, okay, we get why we're doing it, but then you got to give them the product. The product is the win. So why we do this is, for us, is we believe eternity is real, and we believe heaven and hell are realities, and we believe that our message, the gospel, changes people's lives. The win is, let me tell you about Sandy. And Sandy's a single mom who came in and gave God one more shot, and her life was transformed, and her kids love the church, and now they're getting discipled. Always, people forget the why and the win, the why, the win. So I'm always going back to those two things. And so I got to keep changing to keep vision in front of people, to keep whys and wins in front of them. And it's fun. I mean, I love it. I also think, like, get a group of people around you that love to, that have the margin and have the buy-in to dream with you. Like if money was not an issue, what would we do? We ask those kind of questions all the time. If money wasn't an issue, I remember a couple of years ago, I said, if the sky was the limit, what would be that stretch goal for us? And they go, let's launch 2 campuses in 1 year. I go, that's crazy. We can't do this. And we did it, because you just got to have a team around you that's pushing you for it. So it kind of keeps us flexible, keeps us changing. I do think people get a little bit of vision fatigue. I'd be careful with changing too much. Variety is the spice of life. It's not the entree. So when you give them constant variety, then it keeps them guessing all the time. And people want a place that they kind of know that where this is going. Hope that helps.
Yeah, dude. No, that's so good. I mean, like, it's funny. Tony Robbins has this, like, what is it? The 6 essential needs that every human has. And one of them is certainty, and one of them is variety. they're
that
almost
crazy?
like, but you do need a bit of both. And it's probably a tricky balance to find. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think the why and the when is really important. I'm thinking about, even as solopreneurs, it's almost harder, because if you work for yourself, or if you have a small team like I do, or a remote team, like it is so easy to lose sight of the why sometimes at the expense of the wins. Like you're just focused on the wins, like outcome, hitting this revenue goal or hitting this, I want this number of subscribers on YouTube or this number of impact. And the opposite happens too, where you're so focused on the why, but you move past the wins. You've got all these wins and you don't celebrate them because you just moved on to the next one, and then you get burned out because your own vision, like your vision casting for yourself, and you get tired of your own vision because you're not celebrating the wins. So that's real for even one person. One person meeting with myself. Like I can get tired of meetings with myself if I don't have the why and the win about. So I haven't had that language, but that's really practical. Okay, dude, I want to get into the book because I love this book. And it came out last year, and I love it because as I was reading it, did it come out in August of 23?
August 23. Yep.
Yeah. So as I was reading, when it came out, I read it the week it came out, and I was finishing up the manuscript to my second book, Rebel, that same month. And so there's a lot of overlap between what you talk about in this book and my book, even though they're two totally different books. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And you were so kind to endorse my book as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So like real quick, because I want to get into some of it, why like this book is The Unfair Advantage, 7 Keys from the Life of Joseph for Transforming Any Obstacle into an Opportunity. Why write a book about this Old Testament figure, Joseph, and why the unfair advantage? What does that mean in your words?
Okay, so for those who may not be familiar with the Bible, there's 3 Josephs in the Bible, all right? This is if you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, this is your answer, okay? The first one is this guy, Joseph. Then we got Joseph, Jesus' dad. Then we got last Joseph, who's the guy that gave the tomb for Jesus. Just so you know, that's your Bible knowledge there. But this Joseph is one of 12 sons from the very famous family, Abraham, Isaac, and then Jacob. Jacob has 12 sons. This guy gets a dream in his heart. I think he's the perfect example of anyone that's watching this that has got some dream, some destiny, something they can't shake on the inside of them. They know they're created for greatness. They know there's something big on the inside of them. They know that business idea or that influence or that impact they want to make, it's abnormal. And that's Joseph. He just has this dream that he's going to reign. He's going to rule. He's going to be in charge. His brothers are going to bow down to him. And now we can make that a little egotistical and we can make that a little bit arrogant. But I actually think there's something inside of each person that's watching this that goes, no, I know I'm special. I know there's something big. And I actually think God's put that inside of you. So Joseph gets this dream. But from dream to destination, it's 13 years of pain. It's 13 years of heartache, rejection, being wrongfully accused, working hard behind the scenes with nobody noticing it. And I think it is the ultimate description of anybody's life who has done anything great with their life. That I had a dream, the reality when it came to pass, that gap is very difficult. And what I did, I wrote the whole book to help you in the gap. To help you in that I know there's something great inside of me. I'm just not seeing it yet. How do I get there? And I was like, you're going to go through some unfair seasons. And the first unfair season that Joseph goes through is that he's got a dream and nobody else believes in it. And that's the story of all of our life, isn't it? Like, I've got something great inside of me. My friend doesn't see it. My spouse didn't see it. My grandma doesn't see it. But I just know it's there. And my solution to it, which is why Rebel is going to be such a great book when it comes out. Come on, somebody. But is like, you just got to keep dreaming. You got to keep growing in that dream to go, I'm not going to let the influence of the people around me dictate the dream that God has put inside of me. There's something great, and I'm going to keep fighting for it. And one of the crazy passages in this story is after the ridicule of his brothers is the phrase, the Bible says Joseph dreamed again. He dreamed again. And that's the mark of greatness in people's lives. It's not that they had a dream. Like, it's not like you're at 17 years old going, I'm going to write a book. Who cares that you thought that at 17? The question is, at 27, are you still going to dream even though it didn't happen yet? Wow. So that's my challenge for the listeners is like, great, you had a cool experience when you were 15. What are you doing now? What I'm doing is I want to keep dreaming. My unfair advantage is that it hasn't happened yet, but I'm not giving up on it. I'm going to keep dreaming. So that's the whole idea. The title is the idea that everything that is unfair that has happened in your life, if leveraged correctly, can be the advantage to bring you to where you believe God wants you to go with your life. So how do we get there? We don't get there through our successes. We get through our struggles. Our struggles pave the way to the success that God wants to see in our life. I'll give you a cool story, Graham. Is my dad. Yeah. My dad is an ultra successful. I mean, he can sell anything. I mean, he can sell, you know, it's what is it? An ice cream to a snowman. I don't know. There you go. Whatever it is.
But I like ice cream and I like snowmen better. So let's go with that, bro.
Let's go with that. So this guy, I'm writing this book and I'm like, Dad, I know you've been through so many unfair things. How have you gone through it? He goes, you know, what's the craziest thing is, the only thing I know how to do in life is sell. And everything, I pay for y'all's college education, pay for everything because I can sell stuff. He goes, you know how I learned to sell? He goes, my dad is a compulsive gambler and gambled away all of our money. So many times he gambled so bad that they didn't have any food in their house for weeks on end. Like they would have to wait for government checks and stuff because their dad, any bit of money he'd go and sell. He would go and gamble it. So my dad at 13, 14 years old would come home and would have no food. So what he would do is he'd go up the street in Miami and he'd go and pick avocados off of a tree and go stand at a busy intersection and sell avocados, you know, for, you know, $0.25 a piece or 5 for $1. And he made the money at 13 years old learning to sell avocados. And he thought he's selling avocados and mangoes like he's thinking, I'm just going to find a way to make some money to have food in our house. In reality, it was the very thing that prepped him to learn sales to where now he became ultra successful in sales. Your deficit, your struggle is setting you up for how you're going to be a win later on in life.
Hey, friend, we'll get back to the episode in just a moment. Real quick, I hope you're enjoying the episode. And if so, please share it with somebody that needs to hear this episode today. It would mean so much to me. Also, I want to give you a gift for hanging out with me today. I want to give you my free $1 million life-giving business formula on-demand training. Inside of this less than 60-minute training, it will help you uncover your uniqueness to build a 7-figure boutique brand without burning out. This is some of my favorite material. These are the things that I'm taking my private clients through, but I want to share them with you in this free training. So if you've already built your business, but it's not giving you life, it's taking life from you, this is the training for you. It's absolutely free. Just go to grahamcochran.com/lifegiving. That's grahamcochran.com/lifegiving, all one word. And you can register for your spot right there. Now back to the episode. Yeah, that's so powerful. I remember when you shared that story, I think in the book, but it's a really great example of both that and then what you're saying about with the dream and dreaming again, which is like, if you're not a person of faith, you might still believe this to be true, that like everything happens for a reason, as some people will say. And it's not just a platitude. It's not just like it helps me, cope better with the hard things. It actually forces you to be more creative, to look at your life, to look at the ups and downs and say, even if you didn't believe it, if this were all intentionally scripted, if there were someone writing a story and I'm in the story, how could I connect the dots of what has happened to me in the past and what's happening to me now? And how could I see it as an advantage? It almost is just a great thought exercise to not be a victim of your circumstances, but to look at the past and look at the present and look at what you have and what you don't have, personality-wise, resource-wise, skill set-wise, and then find a way for that to be strategic, because you either believe that it is strategic, because I believe that God's orchestrating all these things, or even if it's not, and you don't believe in God, it's like, how could you find the strategy in it? Which almost is like, it takes more grit to live like that than to just give up and be like, well, that didn't work out for me. I mean, like that I kind of had, when you describe someone who has a dream at 15 and then what are they doing at 25? I mean, that was me with the dream of being a rock star my whole life, and like for years, a lot of momentum. And then when that dream had a tipping point where I had to choose between providing for my new wife or chasing after no money, and I chose the safe route, the responsible route, I was so beat down and embarrassed and sad and frustrated that the dream didn't happen that I quit. I quit dreaming altogether. I just made an agreement that was like, you just don't get your dream. And that was stupid. And that's almost like, it showed I didn't have a lot of like dream resilience. I don't know if that's a thing, but like I gave up, like that young exuberance was gone. And God's had to take me back on a journey of like, hey, not only did I not give you that dream for a reason, but like, I want you to dream again. That's language that when I read that in your book, I was like, this is the identity crisis intersection I talk about in my book about like when your dream dies, you can either conform or dream again. And you want to dream again, even if it's a new version of that dream. Cause I'm living like so many new versions of a dream I never even had, because YouTube wasn't a thing when we were growing up. We weren't dreaming of YouTube and, being online. You probably weren't thinking about a podcast because podcasts didn't exist, and you got a really incredible podcast. So it's like, I've had to learn to dream again, and to learn, and this is one of the things I feel like I got from your book, was to learn that the pain has purpose in it too. Because I like to move on from the pain and not talk about the pain. But you've really helped me see that no, there's actually strategy and advantage in embracing the pain and seeing how that's part of your story. You even have this equation at the end of the book to help you discover your unfair advantage. You say my personality plus my passions plus my pain equals God's plan, or you could say equals like my advantage. And I feel like maybe you could talk to that, but that last piece of adding in my pain is part of the unique offering to the world, part of my unique take on the world. That's something I never thought about. And so anyway, maybe speak to any of that. Like how do you think about the pain piece matched up with your personality and passions? Because I usually want to move on from that.
Okay, so if you are frustrated because you feel like your life is filled with pain, well, welcome to the club. Everybody has pain. The question is, what are you going to do about it? So you have two options. You can think that there's a God who is directly ordaining and planning your steps, and He's in charge. And that's where I kind of go. I go on the fact that God is going to turn all things around for the good, and He's going to use it for His purposes. So if you're not in that camp and you go, well, I just had bad stuff happen to me too, I don't know what I'm think about this whole God thing, then here's my question I would ask is, why not leverage that pain for the purpose of your life? There's something big. People are impressed with our strengths, but they're really impacted through our struggles. So you think you're impressing people because of all your strengths. That's not going to make the big difference. The big difference is, how did you overcome adversity? How did you overcome your struggle? So what I would challenge you with is look at all your pain and go, that should be a part of my story that I don't sweep under the rug, but I actually platform to the world, because that's the very thing that's going to help me get to the place. I mean, you got to think of the podcast that we're listening to right now, that if you tune into the podcast and every week is, let me tell you how I've never made a mistake, how I've never screwed up, how every one of my books has been a bestseller, nobody's going to listen to you. Like, that's not reality. Reality is Joseph's story is, I've got a dream. It's 13 years of pain, but I leveraged the pain correctly for the greater purpose that I was going to walk into, that I believe is God ordained. And if you don't believe it's God ordained, then at least believe that there's a great purpose for your life that your pain can connect you with. So what I challenge people in the book is, there's painful seasons, but how you respond matters. It's available for it to be used for the good, but it's not automatic. So think about it this way. I've seen, I was a youth pastor for years, and I had two different teenagers, one was 15, one was 16, both died tragically from cancer. Can you imagine, as a parent, there's not a worse thing you can imagine than losing your teenager to cancer, to watching them suffer. I watched these kids suffer. We prayed. I don't get that. That's going to be one of my questions when I ask God one day, why they didn't get healed. But how the parents responded made a difference. Both of them grieved. You never get over the loss of a child. But one of them grieved, and they learned to leverage their pain to help other people. One of them ended up starting a ministry to help children and youth that were struggling. What did they do? They leveraged it, and they walked into great purpose through their pain. The other family grieved just like the other one, but they never learned how to leverage their pain. They try to sweep it under the rug. They never really recovered. And that family, even today, it's tragic to see them. They have never been able to use that pain to help other people. And they really got stuck in their problem. My challenge for you is hard times happen to everyone. Leverage them for a greater purpose. You lost your job? Great. That's going to be a great story in the book you're going to write one day. Because people want to know that. They want to know how you started the business and it failed. So what do they say? Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. I'm always going to be one of those two. I've never failed because I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
So
no, I love it. I love it so much because I think this is the entrepreneurial's journey is like, you know, Steve Jobs said that business is a game of attrition, right? If you stay, you just got to stay in the game long enough to win. And most people die out. Most companies give up, or when the economy shifts or when the trends shift and they're like, oh, what was selling isn't selling anymore. Like now in my space, right? A lot of people are saying, oh, you can't sell online courses anymore. The whole information product world is falling apart because there's so much content available for free. And yet I have clients and friends and like whose businesses are only growing. They're charging more for their courses and adding more value. And so it's the people who have the resilience to stay in the game long enough, because we don't have all the answers. It's not that we have all the answers. And Joseph is a good example in the Old Testament story, who he had just crazy stuff continue to happen to him. And you would think after the third or fourth crazy thing, whether it's, you know, being sold into slavery or his brothers or being wrongfully accused and like or being in prison or then all the different stuff, he didn't give up like believing in his dream. And you say in the book, that dreams are the foundation on which greatness is built, which I agree. I think nothing exists that's great in this world that didn't start with a dream. When you stop dreaming, you start dying. And I would love maybe for you to unpack what your take is on this, because this is, I think, the miss is people say, I think I'm good. Like, I think I'm either in business, I'm going to coast now that things are working, maybe in the church building, things are good, let's coast. But like, if you've reached your dream or the dream dies, either one, you could still stop dreaming. Like you could stop dreaming because things are great. You could stop dreaming because you didn't get it. And you're never staying the same. Like I think you're starting to die off. You need to either dream a new dream or dream again or get back in that space. So maybe when you wrote this, what do you mean by that? What does it look like for you? And have you seen that in your own life?
Yeah, I mean, your destiny is made up of multiple different moments of dreaming, difficulty, destiny. Dream again, difficulty, destiny. It's the same routine over and over again. So when I get kind of bored or I feel like I made it, then my thing is, what do I need to be dreaming about that's different? I love to take personal retreats away. I do it 2 to 3 times a year, or I just take a day or two, lock myself in a hotel room and just dream. I'd spend that time in prayer, just silence, just kind of solitude. And I think, man, what could God do through my life? What could be next? What could be that great new challenge? What obstacle am I facing right now that I need a really unique way of overcoming that? So, I mean, I'm in the church world. And if you look at and you Google church trends, they're not doing too well right now. So, you know, I think of that. But our churches, like church trends are like less people in America are going to church than ever before. And yet more people are going to Radiant than ever before. So I'm just thinking, how do I buck the trend? What's the dream that God could give me to redo and reshape church in the Tampa Bay area? Yeah. And then it used to be, you have to, you know, build these buildings that were unbelievably and huge. And we've been able to figure out how to do it through mergers and acquisitions and, you know, getting these churches that were dying out to give us their property, and it's miracle deals. So we're trying to think outside the box. And my challenge for you is like, get outside of the box of what is possible in your life. Like, okay, you dreamed when you're 20, but now I'm 40. What am I thinking for the next 20 years? And then I meet with guys they hit retirement, and I'm like, so what's the dream? What's the dream for the next 20? Well, now I've got all this time. What am I going to do with this time? I'm thinking of how to leverage every season with a new dream, a new perspective. So the kids are raised. What is it going to look like now? So I would just say, don't stop, keep it alive. I talk about it in the book. And as you know, Graham, if you wrote books, you know that once you're done writing the book, you forget half of what's in there. So I have to, like, I can't even quote myself in the book. But
It's
I
the
give, I
worst,
think
bro.
it is. I did an interview the other day. They're like, in page 42, where you talk about this victim versus victor thing, can you outline that again? And I'm like, I don't even remember what I was
What are you talking about? Yeah. You tell me. You read it. You tell me, bro. Yeah.
So I was like, I read it 2 years ago when I wrote it. But I give, I think, 8 to 10 stories of business owners that their business took off. Like it either started to excel or they started their business and they're all in their 70s and 80s. Like that to me is a game changer. Yeah. The one I do remember is Kentucky Fried Chicken. Like Colonel Sanders didn't start until he was like in his late 70s or something like that. And I'm thinking, what's the dream that's in your life that isn't even going to come to you yet until you hit 50, you hit 60? So just keep it fresh, keep it alive. And I think that's the key to all of it. It's your unfair advantage is that when everybody else starts coasting, you keep dreaming.
I love that, man. Maybe real quick, before we get to the end here, like I think some people are wired to dream, and I think entrepreneurs, even if they're unlikely entrepreneurs like I was, like it took a global recession to force me to like start something. But even I like caught the bug of, man, almost anything's possible. You can create something out of thin air and you can shape it in the way you want. And it's really beautiful and addicting. But even entrepreneurs hit a wall. So like, how do you counsel people who have big vision? They're like, yeah, I love this. Or they have big ambition, they have big dreams. But when the dream dies, or things do shift, or the business dies, even though it was great, or they just keep hitting a wall, like how do you know when to move on and find a new dream versus stay in the one you're in?
Yeah, well, there is a moment where the horse is dead, you got to dismount. And so some of that is like you're holding on to it and it's all going down. Like you don't have to go down with the ship. This isn't the Titanic. You're not the captain. Sometimes you got to let it go. And the amount of things that we've done at Radiant, I mean, I think a great, we've had so many failures, but every one of the programs we've kind of shut down has let us, have the margin to start something fresh.
Yep.
So I look at it every time. I'm like, okay, is this something that's going to have to die, so that I can really walk into what's next? And I think there's something symbolic about closing one season so that you can open the next season in your life. So the business failed. What are you going to do about it? The marriage ended. What are you going to do about it? The loved one died. What are you going to do about it? You can sit in your grief and your grievances against life, against whatever is coming against you, or you can move on to what's next. And I would just challenge the listener today. Like, I think it's a perfect day to, I said it this way years ago in a sermon. I said, one of the great things you can do is give your struggles or give your failures a funeral, have a moment where you grieve them, and then move on. So we have those things. We close it down. We had a 5 p.m. service here for 8 years. 8 years we ran a 5 p.m. at Sunday night service, and it wasn't working. It wasn't working. And I'm telling you, I had to grieve it. And I know that can sound stupid to a leader that's listening to this, but you don't understand, because there's people that would come up to me and they go, this is my only chance to be at church. But it was killing our team. It was not healthy for our families. It wasn't healthy for our staff. So finally I had to give it a funeral, had to move on. And that's what I just challenge people, like, let it go. And could it be that the lessons you learn from this failure actually sets you up for the success you're going to have in the next season?
Absolutely. I love that. That's been the story of my life for sure. And it's hard in the moment to see the failure or the setback or the challenge, or I really wanted this thing and it didn't happen. And I really believed it was possible. But there's something almost addicting in a good way of looking at everything as a possibility of, well, I wonder how this is going to turn out for the good. And I wonder how I can leverage it and what my part can be. And that curiosity piece this is something I've literally had to go to coaching for, to learn how to be curious. And in my book, we're able to talk about some of that in terms of some of the mental scripts that we tell ourselves. It's hard to have new vision and move into a new area of your life with old code that you're still dealing with in the old inner story. And so you have to undo some of that. And some of that for me is like, this is the way it is. This is the way things are going to be, as opposed to like, well, what else could be true, if not more true than what you're saying is true, and just getting yourself to at least consider alternatives. I love that. Give the sort of dying dream a funeral and be okay with dreaming again. It's not the only dream you'll ever have. It's not even the only version of that dream. I feel like I'm living a version of the rock star dream. It's not the same. I even get to sing it at our Radiant Church. You know, somebody was like, "Bro, you're still a rock star. You still get to sing." And so it's fun, man.
Let me say this though, because I know you have a lot of content creators that watch this and that follow you, because you're one of the best when it comes to writing and content. And I'll tell you, I'm a content creator. Like every single week, I'm having to come up with new content. And when I go through trials or failures, I have a little bit of a joy that gets triggered in my brain now, because now I go, this is going to be one of the great stories I get to tell. And I want you to, like, I want people to think that, like, if you want to write a book one day, the parts of my book that have been the most like talked about are always my painful experiences that I went through. If you follow like one of the big TV preachers, I'm not a TV preacher person, but there's a lady that probably the biggest one in the world is this lady named Joyce Meyer. And you watch her and she's this ultra success. But if you watch her, everything is about, you know, I got angry the other day and I can't forgive my neighbor. And and what is she doing? She's using her pain as the leverage to now go, hey, I messed up. I screwed up. And now I'm going to tell the world about it, because people need those stories. So every time I fail at something now, I killed the 5 p.m. service and I'm going, you know what? This is going to help a lot of pastors one day when they want to kill something. So I'm just using it as leverage now. I'm going to get content out of this.
I love that. It's like having a story bank for all your pain points. Like I put that in the doc because I'm going to use that somewhere. That's so good, man. Well, bro, I have one question I always end the show with for every guest. This can go anywhere you want, so this can be unrelated to whatever. It's called the Golden Rule segment. It's more of a philosophical question. So you've got 5 incredible kids. You and Katie are doing a great job raising them, and you're pouring yourself into them. But you of all people know that they don't listen or remember everything that you say, right? So let's assume hypothetically that all 5 of your kids forget everything you and Katie taught them, except for one piece of advice or one idea that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives, somewhat like a golden rule that you would want them to have to carry with them. What would you want that to be, the thing you want them to remember?
I was a missionary overseas for a year or two. And while I was doing this, I was dating Katie back in America. So I'd go into a project, get into a van, start texting Katie, go to the other project I'd go to, be texting and calling Katie. Finally, this lady looked at me and she said, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm here. I'm in Sri Lanka. I'm in this van." She said, "No, where are you at?" I said, "No, I'm right here. I'm sitting in front of you." She's like, "No, you're here, but you're not here." And then she said this famous quote that has become my life motto. It's the one thing I want to leave to my kids. I think it makes everybody better. It's wherever you are, be all there. Be all there. If you're listening to this podcast, be all here. If you're sitting in a board meeting, be all there. If you're at dinner with your kids, be all there. If you're on a date night, be all there. Wherever you are, be all there. And if you will live in the present, then you will have a blessed future. If you live your life in a fake fantasy world of scrolling on social media, you will never achieve the dreams and the purposes that God has for your life. So wherever you are, be all there. That's what I want most for my kids, for my church.
So good.
It's just live in the present, in the moment that God's got you in. He's got you in your city, at your time, at this age and stage of life. Enjoy it. Make the most of it. And if you go through painful seasons, realize there's a purpose on the other side.
I love it. Aaron Burke, the book is The Unfair Advantage, 7 Keys from the Life of Joseph for Transforming Any Obstacle into an Opportunity. Check out his podcast, or Made for More Leadership podcast. It's a really, really good one, especially if you lead a team of any kind. Bro, it is a pleasure to just have an excuse to like put you on the calendar and get some one-on-one time to talk with you. But thanks for how you show up in the world. Thanks for sharing your pain and your struggles and your joys and successes and your dreams in the book, on the podcast, and with Radiant Church family every single weekend, man. It's an honor to be in your world.
Appreciate you, Graham, so much.